I never thought I'd still be fighting myself at this age. My name is Robert, an 82-year-old. I'm sharing this because for most of my life, I believed some habits were harmless.
Even comforting, I was wrong. One of them quietly took my strength, my breath, and my peace. I didn't see the damage until my body started speaking louder than my excuses. By the end of this story, you'll understand how a single habit can steal decades without making a sound, and how it's never too late to take your life back, even when time feels thin. I used to believe habits were small things. Little routines you repeat without thinking. Coffee in the morning, television at night, one more bite, one more hour, one more excuse. I told myself none of it mattered much. After all, I had survived wars on the news, recessions, funerals, and birthdays that came too fast. What harm could a habit do to a man who had already lived so long? That lie stayed with me for decades. It sat beside me at the kitchen table. It followed me into doctors' offices. It whispered to me late at night when my chest felt heavy and my breath came short. I didn't call it a habit then. I called it comfort. I called it relief. I called it something I had earned. When you are young, your body forgives you quickly. You eat poorly, sleep less, worry more than you should, and somehow you wake up fine the next morning. I mistook that forgiveness for permission. I thought my body and I had an unspoken agreement. I would push it, and it would bounce back. For a long time, it did. I grew up in a house where food was love. My mother cooked when she was worried. She baked when she was sad. She fried when she wanted to feel useful. Plates were full, and seconds were expected. Leaving food behind was considered rude, almost sinful. So I learned early that finishing everything in front of me meant I was grateful, obedient, and good. As I grew older, food became more than nourishment. It became punctuation for my days, a reward after work, a distraction from loneliness, a way to celebrate something small or survive something painful. I didn't overeat because I was hungry. I ate because it made the noise in my head go quiet for a moment. I worked hard most of my life. Long hours, stressful deadlines, responsibility that followed me home like a shadow. When the day finally ended, I wanted something that didn't ask questions, something that didn't need explaining. Food never judged me. It never reminded me of mistakes I made at work or words I said at home that I couldn't take back. Years passed quietly. My clothes got tighter. My energy slipped away, little by little. Stairs felt steeper. Chairs felt lower. I blamed age. I blamed genetics. I blamed everything except the truth sitting on my plate every night. Doctors warned me gently at first. Numbers on charts. Suggestions delivered with professional smiles. Cut back a little. Move more. Watch your intake. I nodded politely and changed nothing. I had lived this long, hadn't I? Clearly, I was doing something right, but habits don't announce themselves as enemies. They wear familiar faces. They speak in comforting tones. They wait patiently while you make excuses for them. My habit waited until I trusted it completely. The first real scare came quietly. A short walk that left me dizzy. A morning where my hands shook for no clear reason. A fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. I sat on the edge of my bed one afternoon, breathing slowly, pretending everything was fine, while fear crept into places. I hadn't felt fear before. Still, I didn't stop. I adjusted instead. Smaller portions during the day, bigger ones at night. Healthier choices followed by secret indulgences. I negotiated with myself like a lawyer trying to win a dishonest case. And somehow, I always ruled in my own favor. The body keeps score, even when the mind refuses to. Mine started collecting interest. Blood pressure climbed. Sugar levels followed. Words like chronic and irreversible entered conversations I didn't want to have. Each diagnosis felt like a crack in a mirror I avoided looking into. I remember one afternoon in a waiting room. The television played softly. A young man laughed with his child. An older woman clutched her purse like it held her life together. I realized I had become someone who lived in waiting rooms, waiting for results, waiting for relief, waiting for someone else to fix what I refused to face. At home, I moved slower. I rested more. I told myself rest was wisdom. In truth, it was surrender disguised as patience. My world began to shrink, not dramatically, just enough that I could pretend it wasn't happening. Friends invited me on walks. I declined. Family suggested changes. I smiled and changed the subject. Admitting the truth would mean admitting responsibility. And responsibility felt heavier than any extra weight I carried. A habit didn't ruin my health overnight. It eroded it, quietly, persistently, like water against stone. Each day felt manageable. Each year took something I didn't notice missing until it was gone. I reached my late 70s believing this was simply how life narrowed with age. Less energy, more pills, fewer options. I accepted it with a tired kind of grace, the way you accept bad weather you believe you can't escape. Then came the appointment that changed everything. The room smelled like disinfectant and old paper. The doctor spoke slowly, carefully. He explained risks. He explained timelines. He explained consequences. And then he stopped talking. Silence filled the space between us. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind. The kind that waits for a response you don't want to give. I looked down at my hands. They looked older than I felt. Or maybe I felt older than I admitted. That was the moment fear finally outweighed comfort. Not dramatic fear, not panic, something colder, something clearer. The understanding that if nothing changed, this habit would decide the rest of my life for me. I went home that day and did what I always did. I sat at the table. I stared at my plate. But for the first time, the food didn't look comforting. It looked like a question, one I could no longer ignore. I didn't break the habit that day, or the next. Awareness doesn't equal action. Sometimes it just sharpens the pain of staying the same. But something had shifted. A crack formed in the story I told myself. That night, lying in bed, listening to my breath, I wondered what else this habit had taken that I never counted. Moments, mornings, years I might still have a say in, and that thought refused to let me sleep. The room felt smaller, the silence heavier. Every breath sounded loud in my ears. I stayed frozen, caught between who I had been for decades and who I might still become before time made the choice for me forever. I didn't touch the food that night. I didn't push it away either. I simply stood there, breathing, letting the urge rise and fall like a wave that no longer terrified me. The phone call ended. The kitchen returned to silence. And for the first time in years, I chose discomfort over damage. That choice didn't feel heroic. It felt small and shaky, but it was enough to carry me into the next morning. I woke up expecting regret, expecting weakness. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar. Pride, quiet, fragile pride that asked to be protected. Breaking a habit at 82 is not about sudden transformation. It is about rebuilding trust with your own body. I had spent decades ignoring its signals. Now I had to learn its language again, slowly, respectfully. The first days were hard, harder than I expected. My body complained loudly. My mind searched desperately for substitutes. I wanted quick rewards, clear proof that I was doing the right thing. But healing doesn't perform on command. I started walking, not far, just enough to feel my heart work without fear. I noticed details I had rushed past for years. The way light hit the sidewalk in the afternoon. The sound of distant laughter. Small reminders that life was still happening around me. Food stopped being an enemy and became a conversation. I asked myself questions I had avoided. Am I hungry or am I lonely? Am I tired or am I anxious? Sometimes the answer surprised me. Often it humbled me. I forgave myself for past failures. That forgiveness mattered more than any rule I tried to follow. Shame feeds habits. Kindness starves them. I learned that too late to be young, but not too late to matter. My health didn't improve overnight. Numbers moved slowly. Some barely moved at all, but my relationship with my body changed. I listened. I rested when needed. I moved when I could. Progress stopped being dramatic and became honest. Friends noticed the difference before I did, not just in how I looked, but in how I spoke. I complained less. I laughed more. I showed up. I wasn't hiding behind comfort anymore. There were setbacks. Days when old urges returned with force. Nights when the past knocked hard. I didn't win every battle, but I stopped calling losses failures. I called them information. Each time. I chose better, even briefly. I weakened the habit's authority. It no longer felt inevitable, just persistent. And persistence can be met. I began sharing my story quietly, not as advice, as truth. People listened. Some cried. Some nodded like they recognized themselves. I realized how many of us suffer in silence, convinced it's too late to change. At 82, time feels precious in a different way. Not urgent, honest. I no longer chase perfection. I chase presence. Being here. Being awake to my own life. My body still carries the marks of years of neglect. Some damage cannot be undone, but regret lost its grip when responsibility took its place. I stopped asking what I should have done and started asking what I could do now. The habit that ruined my health taught me something unexpected. It showed me where I was hurting. It pointed to needs I ignored. Breaking it wasn't just subtraction. It was understanding. I eat differently now. More simply, more gratefully. Each meal is an act of respect, not control. Respect for the body. That carried me this far, despite my mistakes. I breathe easier. Not just physically, emotionally. I no longer feel trapped by routines that don't serve me. Choice returned. And with it, dignity. If you are listening to this and thinking it's too late, I understand that fear. I lived in it, but late does not mean never. Old does not mean finished. Broken does not mean useless. Change at this age is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it transforms the way you wake up, the way you sit with yourself, the way you imagine tomorrow. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do, but I know this. The days I live now belong to me, not to a habit I mistook for comfort. Breaking it gave me something I didn't expect, peace. And that, at 82, feels like a miracle.